Welcome to another episode of As the Brazos Falls. Thanks for joining us today. I'm here with the usual suspects, Pat and Nick. And today we're going to dive into the May 17th, 1922 bridge that collapsed in Marlin, Texas. We're going to toss it over to Pat, who's going to get into the facts.
Hello, TK. So picture this. It's a gorgeous Tuesday afternoon in the middle of May, 5 miles west of Marlin. The Brazos River has been at flood stage for several weeks. There's damage to the bridge. Very important bridge, one of the few ways to cross the Brazos River at the time. Numerous people, some wild accounts, upwards of 1,000, which I am very skeptical of. More realistically, give or take 100 people or so were at the bridge watching the flood stage and the construction to repair the bridge. There were 2 pickup trucks and a Ford automobile parked on the bridge, along with, give or take, 100 people, when the west end of the bridge collapsed, dumping somewhere around 15 people into the river. Construction workers on site hastily built rafts and little boat-type mechanisms to drag as many people out of the water as possible. 8 people were seen to sink in the middle of the river. A couple were pulled out towards the falls, about 3 miles downriver. And a couple of other people were rescued, among them the Reverend H.W. Knickerbocker. It's really interesting, the people that were involved in this. There was J.W. Briggs, who was the youngest victim, 7, a Mrs. C. Mosley and a friend from Beaumont, the mayor of Marlin, Frank Stallworth, and I believe his wife, Frances Marion Stallworth. Dr. W.H. Allen, who is apparently with the mayor and his wife, J. Lee Jones, Herbert Rice, M.M. Jeter, and then Frank Kosnowski were among the victims. I want to add that there was also an unnamed black man that drowned.
So, I have a couple of questions for you. Where was the nearest crossing at?
As far as we can tell, and I'm not
to the bridge that collapsed.
I'm not going to swear this is accurate, but with all the research and digging I've done, it looks like the suspension bridge in Waco was the nearest crossing. This bridge was so vital to the community that they hastily put up a pontoon crossing and completed the repairs and reconstruction of the bridge later that same year. So it was obviously something that was really important to the community and commerce.
Well, roughly about how many miles is Waco from Marlin?
Give or take, it's about 35 miles.
So that's and
today in a car, you know.
So it would have been even crazier then. So that's a huge trek.
Yeah, in 1922, what your vehicle maxes out at 20 miles an hour if you own one?
Yeah, if you own one. That's a good point. So there's not that many crossings down the river, so this was detrimental for the community and surrounding communities that used the crossing. And how many bodies did they find?
So as best as I can tell, they found 4 bodies. There were an additional 8 people that they witnessed drowned in the middle of the river. I can't determine. It's hard to tell. There were no follow-up articles. The initial collapse made big news. The New York Times, the Philadelphia paper, the AP picked it up from the El Paso Herald. But apparently the cycle of news was speedy even in 1922 because there were no follow-up articles that we could locate. But as best as we could tell, there were 3 bodies recovered pretty quickly. What happened to the other 8 that went down in the middle of the river is sort of unknown.
We've talked about the river before. I even drove past it the other day, last week, and there was like 2 whole trees twisted together just going down the river with ease. I mean, it was like so fast. It had no trouble. So imagine a body just shooting out with the current that high. Who knows where they landed.
All seen the Brazos at flood stage at this table. I think it can be really intimidating and scary. I've worked on the banks for years. We would see crazy things come down the river in spring, during the rainy season, dead cows, refrigerators, you name it. It was pretty horrible. I do want to follow up and say that we can find a grave for Mrs. Frances Marion Stallworth, excuse me.
So the mayor's
who was
wife.
the mayor's wife. So at some point in time, her body was found.
There is no way there was 1,000 people. Let's be clear about that.
That's impossible.
Yeah, the area didn't even have that many people back then. And even today, I don't really know the population, but...
No, even by today's standards, 1,000 people down at that little spot of the river where that bridge would have been standing is ridiculous. It's not that large of a location.
Yeah, it's very short.
I'm even kind of skeptical on the 100-person part of it.
Exactly.
Maybe 30-something, because one thing I did hear about is that there were people on the bridge, but there were also people... on both sides,
on both banks,
trying to cross, from what some of the locals told me. So they're trying, and so they were just waiting, and then they saw all these people drop. And I asked them because I talked to the children of the people that were on the bridge. So they're older now, but they were telling me that I asked, oh, well, what happened? Like, did people start jumping in? How many did they pull out? And there were no information about that. Like they didn't know anything.
We've touched on before, this community is not big into oral history or...
Yeah, they like to forget, which is why they probably keep repeating stuff over and over. They don't learn lessons.
One thing I have to point out, if there were warning ropes blocking the bridge that apparently numerous vehicles and a lot of pedestrians completely ignored, which I find to be
There's no OSHA
interesting.
back then, that's for sure.
There's no OSHA and obviously no TV and not a lot going on, because the most exciting thing in town was bridge repair and a cresting Brazos.
I don't know. I think I would be interested if it was something like that. I'd probably want to check it out, but from afar.
From afar, let's not drive the pickup truck across the bridge under construction.
Yeah, so I basically found out about this story. A lot of locals don't even know that there was a bridge that collapsed in Marlin, just like a lot of other historic facts. But I went kayaking down there with my buddy Mike, and there's still pillars in the water from the original bridge. It's really cool to see, and maybe we'll take some photos and post it on our website, which is asthebrazosfalls.com. And
sounds like a great kayak trip, TK.
Yeah, we should go down there and get some new photos. But it was really cool, and he told me the story. His version he told me that basically people went out there to view construction that was going on, and then they fell into the water, like bottomed out. Another version, which was two locals that I spoke about earlier, they said that their parents were there that day, but they weren't on the bridge. So this is firsthand from their parents that there wasn't construction going on the bridge. They said that they went down there because the Brazos was raging from the flood. Like, it had been something that you had to go and see. That was the word in town. So people did go down there, and that's when it collapsed. So both of those people that I spoke to individually, they both said, no, there was no construction. The construction happened after this incident. This was the cause of why they had the construction. But who knows, and that's hearsay. That's like their mom told them they were kids, or, whenever they were growing up. And their parents, it's like, I don't know. It's so weird to only have a little bit of information and not like the rest. Like, if I was hearing that story, I'd be like, so what happened? Did they go save them? Did people jump in? There's none of those kind of details.
Right,
so
and we want all the details.
Yeah, it's weird to just say, oh yeah, I wasn't construction in that, but they were waiting. Like, one of the guys at Ace that I spoke with in Marlin said that his dad was on the opposite side, like towards Temple, on the south side of Highway 7, waiting to cross whenever. And I asked him, well, did your dad go jump in and try to save people, or what happened? And he said he hadn't heard anything about the story past that, basically.
Well, I mean, it's not like back in those days they had all these wonderful things that we have today, like Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram. I don't. They weren't sitting there on the bridge as it was falling down and crossing it, taking selfies of each other and posting on their social media what was going on. So, and even cameras in general. You know,
Yeah,
it was a technology
scared,
that
dude.
was.
I mean, I would have been like, I mean, of course you want to say, oh, I would be the person to go and try to save the day, but if you jumped in, you would be
right?
dead too or close to it.
Nobody jumps into the raging Brazos River without.
So I can't see that, like how they're like, I gotta get my family out of here, because who knows? Maybe they thought the rest of the ground would start going into the water.
And imagine
Who
the
knows what it looked
debris.
like? Yeah. I mean,
When a bridge collapses, it's taking down large chunks of material with it.
well, and some of the material's still there, and then like Nick and I had talked about before, there, you know, the serial killer from Rosebud, that could have been one of his dumping grounds over there. That's also the source of where Marlin gets its water. There's like a pump there. They get some water from there. And they continuously have water issues. I mean, so it's like almost tainted area. Just like a lot of the county, I feel like has this like darkness over it or something. And maybe it's because they never really talk and work things out. And I'm generalizing here, so
Are you saying, TK? Are you saying that we're cursed? Our water issues are cursed because of this.
Maybe so. I mean, it's from the streets to the people to the animals.
You can
to
make
everything.
you can make an argument for
sheriffs. I mean, now we'll see throughout this podcast how much stuff is just in this small county, which is like the third poorest county in Texas. I don't know how big the county is, how it stretches across, but it's kind of large.
It is
like,
a large and geographic area. It's large,
Yeah,
and
it's a lot
it
farming,
sits
though.
in a funny diamond shape, north, south, east, west, so that you cross the tiniest corner of it on I-35.
Oh yes, I have seen that. I forgot it goes up there.
It is the tiniest little corner that you cross on I-35, but then to the east of that is quite the pretty sparsely populated area.
Well, and like how we talked about, there's no way there's 1,000 people. Like, for instance, right now, today, we live in Lott, Texas. That's where we're recording. And Lott has about 700 people. So, I mean, the whole town, you know. Marlin definitely has more people, but still. And at this time, there's several bridges, of course, all the way down the Brazos. But when we first moved out here, there was another bridge that collapsed and had some issues, but not like a full in the water, a bunch of people died or anything. But luckily they saw the damage, they closed the bridge down, and it was closed for months, maybe even a year.
There's something to be said for modern regulation and in government services. Like, let's close the bridge before it collapses and people die.
Thankfully, because people will go out on there. I mean, like, let's say there was no construction and they're just like, guys, I mean, you're going out there to look at something that you don't see every day, this raging river, and you feel safe because you're on this bridge. It's a bridge, like people drive over it. This is vehicles, tons of people. So of course you're gonna feel safe up there. Even, you know, if there was no construction and the bridge was intact and they just went to look, and then it collapsed. But to me, that's just kind of odd.
So, okay, I'm struggling to believe that there was not damage to the bridge. Every source that I could find mentioned previous damage to the bridge from the previous several weeks of flooding.
Okay.
Which would make sense. But then again, like you said, the descendants of the firsthand witnesses.
But see, it also blows my mind because you have some of the pristine people in Marlin going down there. You would think that their head, like, these are educated people.
Yeah, the doctor, the mayor.
Yeah, so they went to go and look, and they felt safe enough to bring their families. I mean, the mayor
and to
brought his
drive
wife.
their vehicles across the...
I mean, that is crazy. It's like, it had to seem safe in some way. Or not. Maybe they just were. That's, I mean, it's dumb in my opinion, but it's like, we weren't there, we don't really know the facts, and like you said, there was no reporting after the incident, you know, of the initial incident, like what happened to the people.
That's what I was so frustrated by in researching this.
Yeah.
We can say that they opened the new bridge within the year.
Oh, that's good.
And that they almost immediately set up that pontoon system, which I
Could
just...
vehicles get on the pontoon or no?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
But I think it does speak to how important that crossing was to the community.
Yeah, because I guess you could walk across where the falls
are.
But you're going to be in water, because if you go down to the falls, which is more east, it's downriver from where the bridge was.
About 3 miles, I think.
And they did find some of the people around there.
Yes, they did.
And that's where you can go, there's rocks going all the way across. But you would be in water, for sure.
And
so at least your ankle or more. If it was raging, I don't even know if you would want to cross.
That's exactly. That could be highly dangerous. Yeah. I mean, that's the place where you get swept off your feet and get your head slammed into a rock.
Oh, yeah, totally. So, as you can see, it's kind of mixed facts. Not a whole lot going on, as always, with stories around falls. But we are going to revisit episodes as we get new information. So our first episode was the Morgan family massacre, and people had reached out to us, some of the Morgans that are still alive. So we might check that out.
Very interesting.
Yep. And we have other episodes coming up. Anything you guys want to share right now? Any questions? We have a visitor with us today. No? Okay.
Okay, I have to throw this out there. I personally believe that all of these people would have had a much better chance of surviving had they been wearing modern clothes. 1922 clothing. I'm picturing lots of layers of skirts. I'm picturing leather shoes with tiny buttons, coats, hats,
I can see that.
umbrellas. I can't imagine that was conducive to swimming.
I also am going to say this. I am happy. I mean, it sucks the situation for everyone, but they did find the little boy's body.
They did.
So they were able to do a proper burial.
Yes.
And I don't know why. I mean, kids always sting a little bit more.
Always.
When you hear something like that.
So. And they did pull the Reverend H.W. Knickerbocker out. He survived. He was exhausted and beat
That's
to hell.
a name.
But
yeah.
Any idea where some of these people came from? Were they local, or did they come from out of town, out of state? Because Knickerbocker is not a name that you hear around these parts.
It is not. We know that Mrs. C. Mosley was from Beaumont, and that a friend was with her. We don't know specifically if she was a local. She's actually unnamed, so they may have just been sightseeing on a little trip. I don't know. But yeah, Knickerbocker was a great name, and Koznorowski was also a really good name. The rest of them were kind of vanilla boring.
Yeah, now that one you just mentioned, was it Koznorowski? You're more prone to hear names like this around this area than you are a lot of those basic names like Allen and Frank and Rice and Mosley. I mean, yeah, you have the people that are local to this area that have those names, but this was in its history, in its growing history, Falls County, and more specifically the county seat of Marlin, was a hot spot for people who were moving this way, not only just from different states, but from out of the country. Even the entertainment scene in Marlin at that time was mostly thanks to a guy named J.C. Chapman, who was a Greek immigrant. So just thought I'd throw that out there because it gives kind of a sneak peek into future episodes around immigrants and the impact they've had on this community and the growth they've had, the growth of this community thanks to them. So.
Indeed, and I'd also like to, I love the point that you made that this was sort of the heyday of Marlin. The bathhouse, the wells, there was a lot more going on in Marlin in the 20s and 30s than you might think.
Well,
yeah.
Dr. Allen was a huge part of the community, of building the community, and they have the Allen House still to this day. I mean, it's set up like it was, which
field
is really
trip.
Cool. Yeah, but they do banquets and things like that. It's like a nonprofit or whatever now, But he made a huge impact on the people in Falls County. Also, I did Google real quick the population, and it looks like in 1920, let's see, there was about 4,000 people, which is a lot more than I would have thought, because now there's like a little over 6,000. So that's pretty substantial so you're right, like, if you weren't moving here to stay, you were moving here for a transition.
You were moving through here.
Yeah, to go somewhere else. So you might set up shop, get established, figure some stuff out, and then go to your, like a pit stop, almost like how Fort Worth was for a lot of people maybe back in the day when they were traveling and moving through towns. Sometimes you would stay at a place for a couple of years before you get things squared away to like move on,
So for date reference, when did the Palace Theater open?
The Palace Theater was built in 1925, but it was not the first theater that J.C. built. He had the Majestic Theater before that, and then Marlin also had the Opera House, and I'll have to get the date on the Opera House, but there has been entertainment venues in Marlin dating back to the I would say the mid-19-teens. So, from anywhere from 1910 to 1925 is when the entertainment industry really started to boom in Marlin. It was also the home of the Falls Hotel, which came several years later after the collapse of the bridge. But it was also the home to several baseball fields where the New York Giant baseball team would come and do their spring training. So a little bit more history for you there, and we can get into that later in future episodes. But
most definitely we'll visit that when we talk about the bathhouses and things of that sort.
So a very interesting era
for
Marlin and Falls County in general.
From before 1900s, but to maybe like when penicillin came into play, like big time. That's when things kind of changed.
And people stopped
coming here.
Self-medicating through mineral spirits and...
Yeah, basically. Like, that's what I heard before about the bathhouses, is the bathhouses, they had spring training, and then the guys would go there and soak, and it was holistic, and... Yeah, but also... they kind of like to spread their seed a little bit too much sometimes, and they would get infections, and the hot mineral spring water helped cure some of that or make the symptoms, subside. Just like, what's the gangster that had syphilis?
Al Capone.
Al Capone would
yes.
go to Arkansas for that.
To sit in the,
to sit in the bathhouses, and soak.
So with the decline of syphilis, we're saying...
Yeah, basically.
And...
That's what I've heard before.
That's
no facts.
A very interesting theory.
TK facts. No.
Just to throw it in there, since Al Capone was mentioned, and we can get into this further down the line at some point, but I actually did have family members and relatives that worked for Al Capone back in his heyday in Chicago. So we can touch on that a little bit more later. But yeah, as you can tell, they needed that pontoon system. They needed that bridge because there was a lot going on in this area at the time, and people had to get here.
Yeah, and especially, who knows where the next crossing was. So we're saying like Waco's about 35 miles, which is really far, but if you go further east, College Station, all those places, like how far did people have to travel to cross? That's something we might follow up with later, but it's just interesting because we see bridges and use them every day, but we don't really think about, issues that it might have, and that maybe that bridge was super low and they learned a lesson to like build them higher in case it floods. Who knows?
The importance of riffraff, maybe.
Yeah. Helping people that band together. It makes sense what you said, basically, of the workers banding together and making rafts quickly, because that might not have been their first rodeo when it comes to something like that. I'm sure
that's a good point.
I'm sure they've had people following the river working, things like that, and they've had to go. And so, I mean,
of course,
if there were workers, they probably had the best chance of surviving because there were workers there that probably knew how to get into action when it comes to bridges.
And they were probably dressed appropriately.
Yeah. Less clothes, for sure.
Of course, that is sort of an idealized, romanticized version, right? Don't we all love this thought of there being a crew of honest, burly workmen who
Yeah.
spring into action, build
their
rafts,
dickies
and
on.
rescue
They're
people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Their
I
clothes
don't
are all
know.
tucked in and the least amount of clothing.
I
And
see
then-
leather boots and leather belts
Yeah.
and
And then you have the people with like an umbrella with petticoats on top. I mean, I totally have that visual too whenever we talk about it. And the gentleman, with the monocle or something.
the watch fob catches on the branch.
Yeah. I just know how scary that river is. I didn't go kayaking when I first moved here. And I've only been with Mike the once, but I was too scared to go on the river by myself.
I don't
because
know
it's
that
raging.
kayaking the Brazos by yourself is a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, he does it, but
Especially up
he's-
there. You get down into Waco when it's controlled,
Yeah,
right?
less flow, it's wider there.
Yes.
Right here, it is tighter, but I felt good going with Mike. He's experienced. He spends tons of time on the Brazos. So I knew, like, I was in safe hands, And I've always wanted to take Amy, but I wanted to go with him. And we just kayaked upriver and then floated down. But you
Always.
can feel all the history.
You
as you're
always
floating
kayak
down.
up
Yeah.
and float down. You're
Yeah.
like,
It
I
was-
have made the mistake of doing the opposite, and it's not a good idea.
But I do want to say I would love to go with Pat and Mike, who also I want to give a shout out to 1912 Coffee, which is a CBD coffee place that Mike and Peggy own in Marlin. And maybe we can get Mike to take us and we park one vehicle down at the falls, go to the bridge, and then we float down so we can see what the people
Yes,
went through.
absolutely.
And I've never seen the terrain going that way to the falls. So we'll plan that and get back to y'all and just give you a little brief.
I see so many
experience.
field trips ahead for us, y'all.
Yeah, I love it. It's exciting. So any other add-ons, guys, that y'all want to mention? I do want to say, please check out the Palace Theater. Do you know the website?
PalaceTheaterMarlin.com.
And they always are having things, support your local arts. They have some Elvis impersonators coming soon, and then Nick will be directing a play coming up, and that will be in May, right? Y'all are still
Yes,
doing
our
that?
upcoming dinner theater. We do 2 dinner theaters a year in May and October, and the upcoming spring dinner theater will be the first 2 weekends in May.
And we are going to be trying to get some more episodes. Pat's going to do some mini-sodes. Pat and I will do some together. And then Nick is going to be pretty busy, so he'll still be here with our full episodes and some of the mini-sodes. And then please check out our website at asthebrazosfalls.com. We also have our Facebook. We're going to be getting some stickers, and please send us story ideas on our website. Pat set that up to where you can go in. If you have questions or stories, please send them our way, and we will definitely check them out.
We want all your crazy, could have been maybe kind of small town Texas stories.
Yes, give us the tea.
Give us some ghost stories too. Like Marlin, for as long as I can remember, and I grew up here, has been home to the paranormal in terms of either legitimate happenings that people have experienced or just good old-fashioned made-up campfire ghost stories. So we want to try and find the truth or debunk the myth, I guess that's how you can put that, as much as possible. So hit us up with anything that you have, any long-term residents. Let us know what you've experienced over your time in Marlin and Falls County.
Yeah, well, thank you for listening, and
Bye, y'all.